An outreach playbook is a documented, repeatable system for reaching your ideal prospects. Not another generic sequence, but a real strategy for getting the right message to the right person at the right time. This one depends directly on the decision-maker profile you wrote in Lesson 6. Because you can't write a message to a VP, you can only write to a specific person with a specific role and motivation, and that's exactly what that profile gave you. If you haven't written it yet, go back and do that first. In this one, you'll define your outreach sequence, write actual email and call scripts, and plan who on your team contacts which stakeholder. A good playbook synthesizes everything you've built so far, your ICP, your DMU map, your decision-maker profile, into step-by-step instructions for every phase of outreach: prospecting, initial contact, follow-up, and multi-threading across several stakeholders at once. It also includes actual messaging frameworks, email templates, and call scripts, so your whole team is working from the same playbook instead of improvising. For a multi-stakeholder sale especially, this is what makes sure every rep is engaging every stakeholder consistently. It takes outreach from guesswork to something closer to a science. First, an outreach playbook is a documented, genuinely repeatable system, not a loose set of habits. Second, it has to be specific to your ICP and your DMU, not generic. Third, it covers prospecting, initial contact, follow-up, and multi-threading in sequence. Fourth, a great playbook is what gives your team's outreach consistency and real effectiveness. And fifth, it's a living document that evolves as your market does, not a document you write once and never touch again. The first is the multi-channel sequence, a structured outreach plan that spreads your touchpoints across email, LinkedIn, and phone, giving you multiple chances to actually land instead of relying on one channel to work every time. The second is metrics, economic buyer, decision criteria, decision process, identify pain, champion. In an outreach playbook specifically, it functions as a checklist to make sure you're gathering the right information as you go, so nothing about your ICP stays theoretical. You've defined the problem, mapped the DMU, crafted the questions, and built the ICP. Now it's time to act. This lesson turns all of that analysis into a concrete outreach plan, a playbook that guides your team on exactly how to engage each stakeholder in your target segments. Honest completion means writing something your SDRs and AEs can actually pick up and use. Surface completion is a theoretical document that sits in a folder and gets ignored. By the end, the output for this lesson is your outreach playbook, the tool that turns everything you've built into action. Back in Lesson 6, you wrote a decision-maker profile, a real description of the specific person you need to win over. Now we build the actual system for reaching them. First, outline a step-by-step sequence for a new target account, covering prospecting, initial contact, follow-up, and meeting booking. For example, identify the 3 DMU roles, send a personalized LinkedIn request to the key decision-maker, send a value-focused email to the economic buyer, then follow up with a call. Next, write 2 to 3 email templates for initial contact and follow-up, plus a 30-second call script for a prospecting call, tailored specifically to the profile you wrote in the last lesson, not a generic template. Finally, plan your multi-threading strategy for each DMU role. Decide who on your team contacts them, like your SDR owning the user champion while your AE owns the economic buyer. Write this all out in the workbook if you have it, since this is the document your team will actually reference on real calls. Your checklist: define a 6-step outreach sequence. Write 1 email template for the economic buyer. Write 1 call script for a prospecting call. Define your multi-threading strategy for a 3-person DMU. And review a recent successful deal to reverse engineer what actually worked about the outreach. These produce a comprehensive outreach playbook, the document that makes your team consistent and strategic, and it directly feeds the final lesson, where you'll track and refine how well it's actually performing. A sales engagement platform had SDRs sending generic, high-volume emails, and their reply rates were sitting below 5%. They were struggling to book meetings with their own ICP, and the outreach was neither personalized nor strategic in any real way. So they built a strict playbook, a multi-channel sequence across email, LinkedIn, and phone, with messaging tailored to each specific DMU role, focused on value over volume. Reply rate climbed from 5% to 18%, and meetings booked went up 200%. not from sending more, but from sending better. Think about that sales engagement platform story. Review your last 10 outreach emails. How many were genuinely personal and value-driven versus generic? Name the specific cost of leaning on the generic version. Now take the decision-maker profile you built in the last lesson and rewrite your standard outreach email to that person, incorporating their specific goal directly. What does the new email actually say? And if your team's reply rate rose by even 10%, how many more qualified opportunities would that generate next quarter? Take a moment with that number. The most common shortcut is building a playbook that tries to apply to everyone, and the cost is a document that gets ignored because it isn't relevant to any specific ICP. Real completion tends to feel like a genuine advantage, clear, specific, and easy for anyone on the team to follow. This playbook operationalizes your ICP and is the direct input for the tracking dashboard in the final lesson. Watch for the trap of overwriting long, complex scripts. The goal is a clear, concise value proposition, not a monologue. And the real test of application. Can your sales team pick this up and execute it without needing extensive training first? Pause the video and open the Lesson 7 worksheet. Under Outreach Sequence, write the first action in your playbook, then the second. Under Email and Call Scripts, write a compelling subject line for your initial contact email, then the key message in the body. Get to the value proposition quickly, don't bury it. Then write a 30-second prospecting call opener, kept concise and value-focused. Your own document works fine if you're not using the printed workbook. This playbook is the roadmap your team follows, and in the next lesson, you'll build a system to track how well it's actually working. Check these off as you complete them. First, Outreach Sequence defined. Check it once you've outlined a real step-by-step sequence. Next, Email and Call Scripts written. Check it once you've drafted your templates and scripts. And finally, check Multi-threading Strategy planned. Once you've defined who on your team contacts which DMU role. With all three checked, you've built a real outreach playbook. You've moved from analysis into action, and your ICP is no longer a concept, it's a documented strategy. This measures whether the playbook you just built is actually being executed. For email personalization, calculate what percentage of your team's emails are genuinely personalized, not templated with a name swapped in. For sequence completion, check what percentage of your team completes the full outreach sequence on each target account. And for connection to meeting, track what percentage of LinkedIn connections actually convert into a booked meeting. A below benchmark result usually means the playbook isn't being followed or isn't landing. And that's exactly the starting point for the continuous improvement work in the final lesson. Practice a 5-minute role play with a colleague. One of you plays the key decision maker, the other plays the champion. The goal is practicing how to empower that champion to pitch your solution effectively on their own. It's a small exercise, but it's a real way to understand the champion's actual perspective. The question to sit with: does your playbook genuinely empower your internal champions, or does it leave them unequipped? Be honest with yourself. What's the one step in your outreach sequence that you or your team are most likely to skip or avoid? Why is that a real problem? What would it actually take to make sure it gets followed? For deeper reading, research best practices for building sales playbooks in B2B SaaS. Look at how companies like HubSpot build and refine their outbound sequences over time, and see what one specific takeaway you could apply to yours. 3 actions to operationalize this playbook. Schedule a team meeting to walk everyone through it. Build a scorecard to track how closely the team actually adheres to it. And commit to reviewing playbook performance after 1 full month of using it. Next time, we close out the workbook by building the system that keeps your ICP and this playbook from ever going stale.